Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Influence Economy podcast. I'm your host, Shayna Davis. I'm so glad that you're here today. But before we get started, I need you to do me a favor. So, wherever it is that you are listening to this episode, I want you to take a screenshot. And with that screenshot, I want you to post it on LinkedIn. And then I just want you to tag me here at Shayna Rattler Davis. And the reason why I do that, I honestly don't care a thing about how many downloads I get. But what I do care about is that, in my opinion, I just think that there's far too many leaders who don't know how to cultivate and build the external influence that I think the new world demands. And the more times we share these episodes, then people will actually be exposed to the signals that they need to develop in order to be able to lead better. So I appreciate you in advance for being willing to share. I'm going to read my guest bio, and then I know that this is going to be a great conversation because we've talked a couple of times now, and he is just an amazing guy, and I can't wait to see what he has to share. So here we go. My guest today is a podcast host, Amazon bestselling author, and entrepreneur. He has been a trusted advisor to many leading international enterprises and brands, including IBM, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, Mentor Nation, and Brother Printers. He has created multiple all-inclusive media campaigns for his clients. He is he's co-founder of International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day, co-founder also of Monday Influencer. He has been recognized by LinkedIn as one of its Power Profile Award winners and is the author of his podcast recipe, which was awarded #1 on Amazon's hot new releases list. I am excited to introduce to the show Nathaniel Schooler.
Wow. Well, for everyone that can't see me on camera, I am blushing. Seriously. Thank you for the invite. It's a real pleasure to be on your show.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because there's one thing, not just one thing. I notice many things that I think leaders need to embrace this day and age that I think they're not embracing. And what I mean is that there are many wonderful leaders that are working inside of organizations that are not their own, right? Like they're not the entrepreneur, but they're a leader inside of a company. And one of the things that I think that they get wrong that impacts not only their level of leadership inside of the company, but it also impacts their ability to become an authority in their space or not, or it impacts their ability or lack thereof to be able to represent their company outside of the walls of the organization, is that they fail to recognize that just because they work for a brand, that they too are a brand, even though they work inside of somebody else's company. I really think that we have to start to see ourselves as personal brands, even if we never have a desire to own our own business or any of the other misconceptions that we have in our mind about personal branding. So, before we get into some of the detail of exactly what that is, how you build it, and all the things that I know are your expertise, I would love if you could share from your perspective, why is it dangerous for a leader to only see themselves as a representative of the company instead of a distinct voice that is within the company?
I could talk for 20 minutes on this, but I'm not going to do that. But no, literally, when it comes to this, it's really dangerous. And I'll give you one example. I was working for a tech company doing some blogs, and I got taken to a big tech event. I met someone very senior in marketing, and this chap had been with the company for maybe 15 years, 10 years, and he reached out to me afterwards, after the event, and he was like, "Oh, you can help me with my personal brand." And I was like, "Sure, I can do that, no problem." And then, literally, he didn't do it because he was too busy, right? And I literally found out that he had moved jobs, right? Probably 6 months later, he'd moved jobs, and unfortunately, from being a marketing director, so from being someone who's on this pay grade with, all the perks, great company, he then had to take a job which was 3 levels below, right? Below where he was. So think about that. The reduction in salary, the reduction in responsibility, depression, and he's still nowhere near there. However, I did help a lady with the same big tech corporation to do her personal brand. She actually lost her job as well because they've been firing people all left, right, and center at management level, which I think is pretty dumb. And unfortunately, happened to her. She had the same kind of career history. She'd been there for maybe 10 years, but she was in PR. And actually, that happened to her, but she managed to get a job with a same job role, if not better, with a big company that was part of. It wasn't a global company, but it was a big company within her country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of however many tens of millions of people. So she would not have gone down in her role. She probably may have gone down a little bit in salary, but I doubt it because she wasn't getting paid the same money anyway as an American would have been because she was in a different environment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that when we really begin to focus on seeing ourselves as a brand, it definitely plays a role in getting picked, paid, and promoted.
100%. And also we become an asset for the company, right? That's the
Yes.
thing. The corporate ladder is broken now. Like we know that, right? We've been watching what's been happening to these tech companies. They've been laying off thousands of people, mid-management people, coders even are being removed, right? And they're getting the top management to do more, the young kids to do more, and they're failing because they don't have the knowledge, right? You can't work with AI if you're not a subject matter expert. In the next few years, they're going to work that out. The major issue that I see, which I know we haven't quite got into yet, is that actually with AI, people think that they can do the personal brand themselves, and
Hmm.
and that interests me. And it
Yeah.
and it and I spoke to someone about it the other day who thought he knew better than me, and he said, "Oh, what do you mean? You doing personal branding for people? They don't need that. They have Chat GPT and Gemini and Grok and it's. Do you know what? You want to be the same as everybody else. You go to Grok, you go to LinkedIn, and if you're listening to this, right, and you go and do this, you'll find out. Go to LinkedIn, look at 10 people's profiles in same
Yeah.
jobs as you, extract all the words, stick them in there, and then put them on yours. And you know what? You're going to look like everybody else, and you're
Yes.
not going to be able to differentiate yourself. And, you know, I was talking to a lady today and helping her with her personal brand, and the lady, she's like a Dawn, like I mean, literally incredible. And she was missing all of these amazing things from her history because it's not about what you're doing now. It's about where you're heading, where you've come from, and why you're different and better than anyone else. And
Yeah.
people don't know how to explain it. And I'm pumped. I'm excited about the whole thing, as you are. I know.
One of the other dangers that I want to make sure that people miss is that because some people who are leaders of leaders or they're the founder of the organization, they may hear this and think, well, number one, that's not my responsibility. But number two, if they're off building a personal brand, it's probably means because they're going to leave here or whatever. Here's the other danger that there is of your people not necessarily seeing themselves as a brand. Anytime you have someone in a role that has to represent your company externally, meaning they have to talk to a potential hire, they have to talk to a potential customer, maybe they're talking to the media, an investor. If the only thing that they're able to demonstrate is the talking points that someone can either read on your website or that your head of comms has fed them to memorize, you're immediately going to erode trust. You're immediately going to erode credibility. However, when a leader actually sees themselves as a brand inside of your company, that leader by default is thinking about their own unique perspective. They're thinking about, where this industry is going and the things that we need to be taking into consideration because they've thought about themselves as a brand within this industry. So if you have anyone in your organization that is engaging outside, that only thinks about the brand of the company and never thinks about who they are as the leader and the narrative that they want to create, then they're going to sound like AI. They're going to sound like robots. They're going to sound like what I heard somebody say this morning that I said I was stealing, a corporate branded parrot, and your messaging is not
Ooh.
going to land. So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork of why this is important, if you're still listening, you're here because you know that you as the leader need to be seen as a personal brand, and you as the leader in the company, you see that your people need to see themselves as that. So now where I want to go next is, oftentimes people when they hear personal brand or whether they hear brand in general, they just think that it's about a logo and colors, and that has very little to do with what a brand is in general, let alone a a brand. So can you first just start by defining like what is a personal brand and just high level what a personal brand includes before we get to some of the detail of how you build it?
Absolutely. Words come before everything in this. You know they do. That's why you're smiling away, right? And I'm just smiling away because when you look at the statistics of a personal brand gets 564% more reach, I believe, than a company brand, right? More shares. I'm sure it's that. It's literally that big, the difference between all of this stuff. And it really is shocking that people aren't doing this. So a personal brand, when I learned this process, I learned it from a gentleman who worked with the Prime Minister of Malaysia. He was writing speeches for him. He was working with Remy Martin Cognac, Krug
Mm-hmm.
Champagne, all of these big brands. And what a personal brand is in the way that I put it together, right? Because there are a lot of these personal brand experts, and I've just been low key, undercover, right? But now's the time for me to come out and say, do you know what? I've actually been doing this for like 10 plus years. Yeah. So, you know, and it is right. Four different things. It's the first thing is it is what do you do as a person? So, like, what do you actually do in your day to day? Okay. Then you have the what makes you different and or better than anyone else. So it's like, okay, you've been around the world, you were homeless once, you did this, you did that, right? It makes you different, you're better, you're more engaging, you're more interesting than other people. And then we've got what gives you authority and credibility. And that could be all these boxes get interchanged, right? Because it's messy. It's not simple to put this together, and you need someone who knows what they're doing to work it out and say, okay, well, that shouldn't be in this box. That needs to be over here, and move it around because sometimes the key differentiators go in this box and then this box, and it gets confusing, right? So then you have the cornerstone words, which are okay, what is this person like? Are they polite? Are they authoritative? Are they blunt? Are they straight to the point? Like there are all these different words, and generally, what you'll find is that if you ask a number of people about this person, they will probably tell you that that's what they're like anyway. So, a personal brand to me, whilst it can be steered in the right direction, it can be guided. It is who the person is. It's not fake. It is authentic. And if it isn't authentic, then it is wrong. And it's actually disingenuous of the person that's actually put it together. And this is why the language models and these inexperienced people are just doing all this personal branding wrong. I'm sorry to say that, but it is.
I
It's
agree.
totally wrong. So that's my take.
I think that's the perfect definition. And one of the things that I do when I work with clients is before we can even get to the branding part or before we can even get to the communication and media training, which is what they immediately jump to that they think their people need, is I say your leaders need to give some thought to what their leadership identity is. And the way that I define that is what is their unique point of view, whether it's about the industry or field that they're in or the product or service that their company is selling. but like what narrative are they creating? What is their perspective? And I think that those are one of the questions that a leader needs to ask themselves before they start thinking about the branding piece and the messaging piece, which is some of the more technical things. Before a leader starts to think about building a personal brand, what's another question that they should ask themselves, that if they don't answer that and they just jump straight into some of the other technical pieces, that it's actually going to be ineffective for them?
Well, it's like what's your purpose? Like what are you here to do? How are you going to help the world, right? Nobody wants all this jargon and all this junk, yeah? And I went through this process many times in the last 10 years, and I discovered that I my purpose is to help people overcome the roadblocks in their lives to achieve success and happiness. And that's my purpose. And if you can align your purpose with the business you're working within, then you're in a fantastic position to help the world, right? And that's what this is
Yeah.
about. That's why we show up every day. That's why we're on all these social channels. That's why we do podcasts and inspire people, right? And that's hugely exciting, actually, to be honest.
One of the things that I find fascinating, and when I say fascinating, I'm being sarcastic. It's not a good thing. It's like in the South when we say, bless her heart. That's not a good thing. One of the things that I find fascinating as I work with these companies or I study these companies is that what I want to be known for, what my purpose is, and what my identity is the number one question that humans have. Yet it's the very last thing that companies help them to develop. Yet you want them to show up and perform well. You want them to show up and lead your organization into the great wild yonders. It's late in the day, so I'm getting a little silly. But the point is that it's so important. And if that foundational work has not been done first, you really can't expect the hard skills that you're training them on or some of the levels that you're expecting them to perform at to translate well. You can't really expect them to be a good ambassador of your company when they're still sitting there asking themselves the question of, I really don't even know, what my purpose is or what my identity is, but we just want to jump straight to the thing, right? So with that understanding of what a personal brand is and what it isn't, and kind of some of that foundational work that a leader needs to do before building a brand, now we're ready to build it, right? What would you say if a person hasn't hired you? What would you say for a person that now has a solid understanding before they get started? What would you say are the first, I don't know, 2 to 3 steps that they take in order to begin building a personal brand?
You mean after the wording is done?
After they've gone through the process and the exercise of determining what is my purpose, what do I want to be known for, who the hell am I now
Right.
recognize that I want to be more intentional about that, and I've now said I want to build a personal brand. What are the next steps from there?
Well, they need to first of all get a document together, get a one-page document that they can use as a briefing document for
Mm,
briefing agencies, briefing people like you and your company, right? I mean, that's what you guys do, right?
yep.
Briefing photographers, briefing the media, talking to PR companies, and then the photographer, the videographer, like the stylist. I mean, it's levels, right? It's all about levels. It's like
Yep.
how far do you want to go? Where are you starting from? Where do you want to get to? And then kind of go from there, really.
One of the things that I think is missing when people are creating this brief or this one-page document that you're referring to, which I do agree is the first step, is that if it's just going to read like a resume or it's just going to read like a bio, you've missed the point. This document also has to demonstrate the value that you bring to the person who is reading the document. And I can't tell you how many times I see what people put together and what people put before me. And I'm like, this is just a long bio. This is literally just a regurgitation of your education and who you've worked for and what it is that you did. But what does that mean for me? What do I do with this information? How do I use this information to recognize that you're someone that I should hire or someone that I should interview or someone that I should, whatever the the goal is? What else do you think needs to be in this document? If you're saying that's the foundation, what else needs to be in this document so they don't just go off and either put a bunch of shit in here that doesn't matter, or they go to AI and it creates a bunch of crap for them that
Well,
don't
nothing needs
matter
to,
either?
but nothing needs to be in there. This is the point, right? Like as little as possible. Yeah. This is the point. Simplicity, right, is the core of this because that document is what the foundations are for everything. It's the foundations for your LinkedIn profile. It's the foundations for your resume. It's the foundations for speaking engagements. Say you have a speaking engagement with the WI as one example, right? And you've got all your statements ready, you've got your authenticity stuff, you've got everything. And then you're like, okay, so which ones do I use to talk in front of this group of women? And
Mm-hmm.
then you're like, aha, I'm going to talk about the time when my father used to go to MIT and then he talked to the WI when he had a winery, right? This is a true story. And so it's picking the things that appeal to the audience. And it's not about grammar, it's not about punctuation. If it has a full stop in there, it's completely the wrong document, right? It's like, huh? Is there a full stop in there? So
So
that's
this
my take, yeah.
so this document is good for what? And the reason why I say that is because if the question is how do, now that we know who we are, how do we build a brand around it? We start with this document, and the document then helps us to be able to do what as it pertains to building our brand.
Well, everything. It's like a color palette. If you think about it like a color palette, and there are certain colors that you might use. So say for example, you're putting a logo on a page. You might use a logo that's white and black, right? And then on that, or white. And then on the other page, you're like, oh, I can't use that logo. It needs to be black, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's about picking the words that you feel comfortable with that
Mm-hmm.
actually suit the platform that you're on, and then fleshing them out. You can use AI to flesh them out if you want to, but then you still need to read through it. You still need to make it make sense. And then you use it to enable people to understand you more. So if you're on stage in a certain space, you're going to use one statement or two. You might use three. You might not. You might talk about something completely different and then let them find out about you at the end. I mean, it really just depends on where you are because there are going to be certain things that appeal to certain audiences, right? But having one thing that's really powerful, something might push your buttons more than something else. So I think it really just depends. And that's
So
what
what I think
that's what an
what I think
expert
I
like you would be able to work out, I would imagine.
what I think I hear you say is, if what it is that you are building next is, I'm just going to use an example. If what it is that I'm building next is, I know I'm going to build a LinkedIn profile, and then I know I'm going to build a one page website about myself, right? What I
Yep.
think I'm hearing you say is that there needs to be statements and images and ideas, ways that I talk about myself and what it is that I believe in, so that I can pull what's appropriate from that document for what it is that I'm building next. Is that what you're saying?
100%.
So, what my question was is, if I decide that I want to build a personal brand, what are the next things that I need? Like, do I need to make sure I have a website. And like before we
No,
can think about like what goes in those things, what are the different components that I need to say I've built? If I look back 6 months from now, I can say, since I have done these four things, I know I've had a personal brand. Is it I've got a profile on social media, I've got a website, and I've got this document? Like, what are the actual tangible components that I can check off and say, if I've done these three or four things, I know that I'm at least on my way to having a personal brand. And the reason why I say that is because what I don't want people to do is listen to this and say, if I've done the work to ask myself who I am and kind of what the statements are, well, I've got a brand. Because that's not the start and stop of it. I know
no, no,
that.
no, no. Okay, I'll answer your question. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Um, so I think it depends on what business that you're in, but I
Okay.
do think LinkedIn is the most important place, in
And do
my
you see a
personal
lot of leaders
opinion.
that don't even have a LinkedIn profile?
I see loads of people that don't have a clue, that write the worst, they have the worst junk I've ever seen.
Or they don't have a profile at all. I'm like,
Yeah,
how
or
are
they
you
have a
a leader and
picture
you don't
that
even have a profile?
yeah, but they have a picture that's facing the wrong, like they're over there, like looking the wrong direction, or and it's just so. But I can understand that because you'd get approached by all sorts of Tom, Dicks, and Harry, and then
Yeah.
they try and sell you stuff. So you can make it as friendly or as mean as you want, and this is the
Yeah.
whole point: is that it is. So that's first thing. First thing, you need a profile shot because you need one. I try to
And it
get
doesn't need to
Google.
look like you. I'm not saying that you have to look
No,
like you went to the professional photographer, but it
no,
also
no.
can't look like you're at the backyard barbecue.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. And I've done interviews and talked about this with people, and so it just totally depends on your goals, right? If you want to get on social media and build a brand and become an asset for the company that you're at, maybe your marketing team might actually contribute some funds towards it, help you build the brand, help you hire us, right, to go and do it, and because the reach is massive. It's so much better, and people listen to people more than they do brands. They're so
Yeah.
bored of brands completely. And I just think then it depends on the channels, right? You don't need a website necessarily, but I personally like to own page one of Google for myself. So it depends. If you're an actor or an actress, you want IMDb, right? So I got on IMDb with my podcast because I was like,
Hmm.
okay, that's a good link and get on there. If you
Hmm.
want to write a book, you can write a book. It really depends on how far you want to take it, how good you feel about yourself, because there's a lot of confidence a lot of people, they're affected by their confidence. And if they can't see the future version of themselves, then how are they going to build a personal brand, right? Because they're terrified of being visible. So it's a level, there are all these levels, and I think that's why it fits nicely with executive coaching. It sort of borders executive coaching, because actually executive coaching, it will enable them to realize that they are quite amazing. They can do what they said they're going to do. They're going to do it. But actually, if they don't want to get fired and they want to be an asset for the company, never mind what role they're in. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
role you're in. You are a speaker. You're an ambassador for whatever you do. The
Yep.
company, the business you're involved with, and it lands all sorts of amazing things, like you know universities inviting you to join the board to talk about things. I can't talk about that right now, but so it literally just depends on where you want to go and how far you want to head, and the industry you're in and the company you
Yeah.
work for. And
I would add to that because there are variables that it depends, but I would add to that regardless of who you are or where you're going, there are some key things that you have to have in place. I would say that the steps to that are, after you have asked yourself, who the heck am I? And what is my perspective? I would say that the very first thing that you have to have is, at the very least, a LinkedIn profile.
yeah,
But on that LinkedIn profile, do not use it like a glorified resume. make sure that on that LinkedIn profile, that in addition to having a picture that doesn't look like it was taken at a backyard barbecue, it can still be taken with an iPhone as long as somebody else took it and it's not a selfie. But I want you to ask yourself, in the about section, I want you to go back to some of those questions that you asked yourself about what is my purpose, because that's what the about section is really about, is who are you as the individual? What is your perspective? I don't just need a paragraph form of what I'm going to read when I get down a little bit further on the experience section. Outside of your non-glorified resume LinkedIn profile, I think from there you have to ask yourself, based on my role, based on my industry, based on who my company is, where else might I need to have a presence? Sometimes it's going to be nowhere, and having a good quality LinkedIn profile may be all that you need for your personal brand. Other times, you may need to ask yourself, in order for me to really be a great leader for this organization, I also need to know what associations and organizations are part of my industry that I need to make sure that I am contributing there. Whether it's me contributing by showing up at an event and being prepared to not speak like a robot, or whether or not it is, going there to have a booth to recommend my company. So yes, there are variables and it does depend on a number of things, but at the very least, you have to ask yourself, who am I? What is my perspective? And where does my perspective need to be present? Because then you're not only going to be a leader that gets picked, paid, and promoted because you've thought beyond your company, but you're also going to be the best ambassador for your company that you can be. And let me tell you, right now, at the time of this recording, every company is in a war over talent. Every company is experiencing a trust gap that is continuing to widen, and every company is being disrupted by technology. And the companies that win are going to be the ones who have leaders who are visible and credible. And if you can't do the things that Nathaniel has been talking about, and you don't ask yourself the questions that we have talked about today, you're going to make it more difficult for your company to win in the next decade, and you're going to make it more difficult for you to get picked, paid, and promoted where you're at, or for you to get picked, paid, and promoted where it is that you want to go in the next company. And that's
I'm
my
just smiling.
soapbox.
I'm smiling away because I can't argue with anything that you've said.
Yeah.
Completely 100% correct. And how far you want to go into your origin story. Like,
Yep.
look, I got expelled from boarding school. My parents nearly killed me. My dad went to MIT, right? And my grandfather. I didn't, you know. And now I'm just like, well, actually, I'm nearly 50. If I want to say that, I can say it, right? I'm not a kid anymore, and
Yeah.
you learn from all these experiences. And if you wear it and you take the lesson from it, right, actually it becomes part of who you are. And, you know, just is life, right? Just embrace
Yeah.
it, embrace who you
Absolutely.
are, you know.
Since there are so many other things to take into consideration that are contingent upon the individual and what it is that they're looking to accomplish, I know people are going to want to get more from you, or they should. If you're listening to this far, surely you've recognized by now that you should. So if people are looking to follow you on social media, where should they go, and what's your name over there?
LinkedIn is the best place. That would be Nathaniel Schooler, but you can just type Nat Schooler into Google, and there's yeah, there are millions of
Yeah. The
things on
link to
there.
the link to it'll be in the show notes, so we'll make sure that it's there. I don't send anybody to go hunting for stuff. I'm going to give
No,
it
don't, don't,
give it
don't,
to
don't
them.
hunt.
It'll be in the show notes. And then if somebody
Sorry.
is listening to this and they're like, I need to take this further, what would you like to offer them? What should the next step be to
Well,
take things further with you?
you can connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email, which is just nat@natschooler.com. And that's like a school with an er.com.
Awesome. We will make sure that the links to his email address and his LinkedIn profile are both in the show notes, so that all that you have to do is click it and you'll be able to find it easily. His wonderful accent. We didn't talk about this, but he lives in Croatia right now, even though you can tell by his accent that's not where he originated. That wasn't, Croatia was not part of his origin story. But anyway, Nat, thank you so much for being here and sharing your nuggets. I know that this episode is going to be a hit because oftentimes I think this episode, if it did nothing else other than to get them to see themselves differently as the leader than just their job title or their role, I consider it to be a win. I also think that you have given them some great next steps, and I hope that they take things further with you as well. So I appreciate you for being
Thank
here.
you.
Everyone, share this episode far and wide. And I hope that you go back and listen to previous and future episodes as well. Everyone, have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you.